Rockaways Productions presents The Casey Waters Show, Episode 538, Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz MD, Part 2. Hello, I'm your host, Casey Waters. Today, I have Squeaks with me. Today, I will continue with Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz MD. This book deals with the power of positive thinking, among other things. It is a classic self-help book. Today's background footage will be from Catawba Falls. Catawba Falls is located in Old Fort, North Carolina. To get there from Asheville, North Carolina, take I-40 East. Then take the second Old Fort exit. Near the end of the exit ramp, before you reach the end, take a right onto Catawba River Road. Follow the road to the end. There, the trail starts. There's actually two trails. There's a trail that goes along the river, and when you reach the lower falls, there's a long series of steps and a viewing tower, and steps beyond the viewing tower, and eventually you get to the upper falls. However, there's an alternative route. There's another trail that goes through the woods and up the mountain, and then it comes down to the upper falls, and then you go down the steps to the lower falls, down the viewing tower, and out down more steps till you finally eventually reach the parking lot. So now, let's continue with Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz MD. Now, let's go to page 62 of Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz MD. Feelings of inferiority originate not so much from facts or experiences, but our conclusions regarding facts and our evaluations of experiences. For example, the fact is that I am an inferior weightlifter and an inferior dancer. This does not, however, make me an inferior person. Paul Anderson's and Arthur Murray's inability to perform surgery makes them inferior surgeons, but not inferior persons. It all depends on what and whose norms we measure ourselves by. It is not knowledge of actual inferiority in skill or knowledge that gives us an inferiority complex and interferes with our living. It is the feeling of inferiority that does this. And this feeling of inferiority comes about for just one reason. We judge ourselves and measure ourselves not against our own norm or par, but against some other individual's norm. When we do this, we always, without exception, come out second best, because we think and believe and assume that we should measure up to some other person's norm. We feel miserable and second rate and conclude that there is something wrong with us. The next logical conclusion in this cockeyed reasoning process is to conclude that we are not worthy, that we do not deserve success and happiness, and that it would be out of place for us to fully express our own abilities and talents, whatever they might be, without apology or without feeling guilty about it. So now, let's go to page 66 of Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz MD. Dr. Knight Dunlap, a psychologist and past president of the American Psychological Association, made a lifelong study of habits and learning processes, and perhaps performed more experiments along this line than any other psychologist. His methods succeeded in curing such habits as nail biting, thumb sucking, facial tics, and more serious habits where other methods have failed. The very heart of his system was his finding that effort was the one big deterrent to either breaking a bad habit or learning a new one. Making an effort to refrain from the habit actually reinforced the habit, he found. His experiments proved that the best way to break a habit is to form a clear mental image of the desired end result and to practice without effort towards reaching that goal. Now, let's go to page 82. Rational thought. To be effective in changing belief and behavior must be accompanied with deep feeling and desire. Picture to yourself what you would like to be and have, and assume for the moment that such things might be possible. Arouse a deep desire for these things. Become enthusiastic about them. Dwell on them and keep going over them in your mind. Your present negative beliefs were formed by thought plus feelings. Generate enough emotion or deep feeling, and your new thoughts and ideas will cancel them out. If you will analyze this, you will see that you are using a process you have often used before. Worry. The only difference is you change your goals from negative to positive. When you worry, you first of all picture some undesirable future outcome or goal very vividly in your imagination. You use no effort or willpower, but you keep dwelling on the end result. You keep thinking about it, dwelling on it, picturing it to yourself as a possibility. You play with the idea that it might happen. This constant repetition and thinking in terms of possibilities makes the end result appear more and more real to you. After time, appropriate emotions are automatically generated. Fear, anxiety, discouragement, all these are appropriate to the undesirable end result you are worrying about. Now, change the goal picture, and you can easily generate good emotions. Constantly picturing to yourself and dwelling on a desirable end result will also make the possibility seem more real. And again, appropriate emotions of enthusiasm, cheerfulness, encouragement, and happiness will automatically be generated. In forming good emotional habits and in breaking bad ones, said Dr. Knight Dunlap. We have to deal primarily with thought and thought habits. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. Now, let's go to page 91 of Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz MD. Proof of the fact that we have been saying is true can be seen in the experience of writers, inventors, and other creative workers. Invariably, they tell us that creative ideas are not consciously thought out by forebrain thinking, but come automatically, spontaneously, and somewhat like a bolt out of the blue. When the conscious mind has let go of the problem and is engaged in thinking of something else, these creative ideas do not come willy-nilly without some preliminary conscious thought about the problem. All the evidence points to the conclusion that in order to receive an inspiration or a hunch, the person must, first of all, be intensely interested in solving a particular problem or securing a particular answer. He must think about it consciously, gather all the information he can on the subject, consider all the possible courses of actions. Above all, he must have a burning desire to solve the problem. But after he has defined the problem, sees in his imagination the desired end result, secured all the information and facts that he can, then additional struggling, fretting, and worrying over it does not help, but seems to hinder the solution. Now, let's go to page 107 of Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz MD. Happiness is native to the human mind and its physical machine. We think better, perform better, feel better, and are healthier when we are happy. Even our physical sense organs work better. Russian psychologist K. Ketchev tested people when they were thinking pleasant and unpleasant thoughts. He found that when thinking pleasant thoughts, they could see better, taste, smell, and hear better, and detect finer differences in touch. Dr. William Bates proved that eyesight improves immediately when the individual is thinking pleasant thoughts or visualizing pleasant scenes. Vision educator Margaret Corbett found that memory is greatly improved and that the mind is relaxed when the subject is thinking pleasant thoughts. Psychosomatic medicine has proved that our stomach, liver, heart, and all our internal organs function better when we are happy. Thousands of years ago, wise old King Solomon said in his Proverbs, "A merry heart doeth good like a medicine, but a broken spirit drieth up the bones." It is significant, too, that both Judaism and Christianity prescribe joy, rejoicing, thankfulness, cheerfulness as a means towards righteousness and the good life. Harvard psychologist studied the correlation between happiness and criminality and concluded that the old Dutch proverb, "happy people are never wicked," was scientifically true. They found that a majority of criminals came from unhappy homes, had a history of unhappy human relationships. A 10-year study of frustration at Yale University brought out that much of what we call immorality and hostility to others is brought about by our own unhappiness. Dr. Schindler has said that unhappiness is the sole cause of all psychosomatic ills and that happiness is the only cure. The very word disease means a state of unhappiness, dis-ease. A recent study showed that by and large, optimistic, cheerful businessmen who looked on the bright side of things were more successful than pessimistic businessmen. Now, let's go to page 112 and continuing on to page 113 of Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz MD. Even in regard to tragic conditions and the most adverse environment, we can usually manage to be happier, if not completely happy, by not adding to the misfortune our own feelings of self-pity, resentment, and our own adverse opinions. How can I be happy? The wife of an alcoholic husband asked me. I don't know, I said, but you can be happier by resolving not to add resentment and self-pity to your misfortune. How can I possibly be happy? Asked a businessman. I have just lost $200,000 on the stock market. I am ruined and disgraced. You can be happier, I said, by not adding your own opinion to the facts. It is a fact that you lost $200,000. It is your opinion that you are ruined and disgraced. I then suggested that he memorize a saying of Epictetus, which has always been a favorite of mine. Men are disturbed not by the things that happen, but by their opinion of the things that happen. Now, let's go to page 119. Professor Elmer Gates' practice of calling up pleasant ideas and memories is one of the most important aspects of psycho-cybernetics. When we fail to recall our good moments, our best times, it's as if we've been disconnected from the source of all things good. But as soon as we remember and feel what it was like to be at our best, the switch just turned back on. We are reconnected and we start experiencing bliss internally and externally. Our thoughts are not only positive, so are our feelings. And, oddly enough, most of the circumstances we encounter that would have been negative in the past are now pleasant, harmonious, and vibrant. Now, let's go to page 120. Continuing on to page 121 of Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz MD. Our self-image and our habits tend to go together. Change one and you will automatically change the other. The word habit originally meant a garment or clothing. We still speak of riding habits and habiliments. This gives us an insight into the true nature of habit. Our habits are literally garments worn by our personalities. They are not accidental or happenstance. We have them because they fit us. They are consistent with our self-image and our entire personality pattern. When we consciously and deliberately develop new and better habits, our self-image tends to outgrow the old habits and grow into the new pattern. I can see many patients cringe when I mention changing habitual action patterns or acting out new behavior patterns until they become automatic. They confuse habit with addiction. And addiction is something you feel compelled to, and which causes severe withdrawal symptoms. Treatment of addiction is beyond the scope of this book. Habits, on the other hand, are merely reactions and responses that we have learned to perform automatically without having to think or decide. They are performed by our creative mechanism. Fully 95% of our behavior, feeling, and response is habitual. The pianist does not decide which keys to strike. The dancer does not decide which foot to move where. The reaction is automatic and unthinking. In much the same way, our attitudes, emotions, and beliefs tend to become habitual. In the past, we learned that certain attitudes, ways of feeling and thinking were appropriate to certain situations. Now we tend to think, feel, and act the same way whenever we encounter what we interpret as the same sort of situation. What we need to understand is that these habits, unlike addictions, can be modified, changed, or reversed simply by taking the trouble to make a conscious decision, and then by practicing or acting out the new response or behavior. The pianist can consciously decide to strike a different key if he chooses. The dancer can consciously decide to learn a new step, and there is no agony about it. It does require constant watchfulness and practice until the new behavior pattern is thoroughly learned. Now, let's go to page 128 of Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz MD. Get yourself a goal worth working for. Better still, get yourself a project. Decide what you want out of a situation. Always have something ahead of you to look forward to work for, and hope for. Look forward, not backward. Develop what one of the automobile manufacturers calls the forward look. Develop a nostalgia for the future instead of the past. The forward look and a nostalgia for the future can keep you youthful. Even your body doesn't function well when you stop being a goal striver and have nothing to look forward to. This is the reason that very often when a man retires, he dies shortly thereafter. When you're not goal striving, not looking forward, you're not really living. In addition to your purely personal goals, have at least one impersonal goal or cause which you can identify yourself with. Get interested in some project to help your fellow man, not out of a sense of duty, but because you want to. Now, let's go to page 131 and look for and seek out true information concerning yourself, your problems, other people, or the situation. Whether it is good news or bad news. Adopt the motto, it doesn't matter who's right, but what's right. An automatic guidance system corrects its course from negative feedback data. It acknowledges errors in order to correct them and stay on course. So must you. Admit your mistakes and errors, but don't cry over them. Correct them and go forward. In dealing with other people, try to see the situation from their point of view as well as your own. Later on page 131 and continuing on to page 132. Nothing in this world. Casey Waters Show. Producer Casey Waters. Graphic editing Judson Laird. Please note our new email address, CaseyWaters2 @CaseyWaters.com.